Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we pot up some annual plants. So let's go. I am in my happy place. Actually, my happy place is being out in my garden, but this probably ties it. It is the middle of March, and here in New Hampshire, we still have some very cold temperatures. In fact, the average last frost date for me, based on my zip code, is May 15th. So I still have almost 2 months, and I keep trying to remind myself of that. And you should too, depending on where you live and your zip code. If you still have a number of months before your average last frost date, don't worry about it. We'll eventually get there, and that's what I keep telling myself. And until then, I have plenty to do inside when it comes to my seedlings. And then on the nice days, I'm outside and just doing whatever I can, be it picking up sticks or doing a little bit of weeding. So there's always some jobs to be done this time of year, which is nice. But I wanted to give you basically an update video on a couple of plants that I noticed have been very popular for videos that people have been looking at on my channel. One of them being impatiens. I wanted to share a funny story with you. For a number of years, I've been growing impatiens from seed, and it's seed that I just have collected myself. And last year was unfortunately a fail. I didn't grow as many impatient plants as I wanted to, and I was so sad because I have a lot of shade here where I live, and I really rely heavily on shade plants such as impatiens. And so I told myself that's not happening this year. And I started a bunch of seeds. And when you collect your own seeds and you just scatter them, it's hard to count how many seeds you've sown. Clearly, I sowed quite a few, and I am absolutely thrilled about it. I was counting up how many trays I had here, and I had 9 trays. So let's do a little bit of math. We have a 6 pack, and then in each 10 by 20 tray, there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 6 packs. So that is 72 impatiens per tray times 9 trays. I'm not going to do the math right now. I'll pop it up on the screen, but that's a lot of impatiens, which I'm so happy about. I also adopted a community flower garden, and it's about 25 minutes from my house. And I typically in the summertime will go there about once a week or so. There are a few areas that are shady, so I'm going to test out some of the impatiens over there as well. But I'm looking forward to putting these in a lot of my window boxes, hanging baskets, in container pots, and even in the landscape. I've never really put impatiens out in my landscape, but Mr. Budget Gardener and I have been working very hard during the last year to put down drip irrigation in a lot of my flower beds where the lawn ends and where the flower beds begin. And they're just at the edge of the woods. And I thought that these would look really nice towards the front of those flower beds. So I definitely have areas planned for putting my impatiens as well as wax begonias. And I started a ton of wax begonias from seed as well. So I thought I would make a video just to go over, the plants that we're looking at here. And in case you also have been following me and you started a bunch of impatiens from seed, and if you did sow them heavily like this, I just wanted to show you my process of what I do to take them out of a tray like this and just pot them up into a 6 cell pack. What I like about having so many extra impatiens is losses do happen. Every so often in these trays, I lose 1 or 2 or 3 plants. And as I notice that happening, I then just prick out a plant from here and replace it in these 6 packs. So that's been working out really well. But I do want to continue working on this project. I do realize I have a lot of other plants going on inside. I'm working outside as well. So if I don't get to all of these, it's not the end of the world, but I'd like to, because look at, there's probably another, I don't know, maybe 100 seedlings in there. So when you plant seedlings like this and you're pricking them out, it's going to happen that the seedlings that were pricked out initially, let's say 3 weeks ago, those seedlings are going to be much bigger. And then the seedlings that are still in here, they're all competing for space. Those are going to be much smaller. They're not going to have as many leaves on them. So that's why you'll notice when I'm showing you close up what these plants look like, you'll see that some of the seedlings have a number of leaves on them. They're much bigger. And then some of the seedlings are still very small. And it all comes down to the fact that some of the seedlings were potted up much earlier than other seedlings. And when it comes to bottom watering, what I've been doing is in like a 10 by 20 tray, I lift up a 6 cell pack like this one here. And many of these seedlings still only have their initial cotyledon leaves, the first leaves that we're showing. So they don't get any fertilizer. They only get water. And I will only water this when this feels really light. I actually like to let my seedlings dry out. I don't want them to be wet all the time. That can cause a lot of issues like damping off, and it can kill your seedlings. So I will water them really well, nice and deep watering, but then I just let them be. And I don't water them again until they tell me they need water, which is feeling the tray. It feels nice and light. Looking at the top of the cell packs, the color goes from like a dark brown to a light brown. I look for those indicators. And then I give them water again. And I also have a fan running in this area. That helps with movement in the room, makes for stronger seedlings. It also dries off the tops a little bit, which is good for the plants. And I just use a small watering can that I have here handy in this area. And I just fill it to the bottom of this tray, about, I'd say, 1 inch of water. I put the cell pack back and then I wait. It usually takes about maybe 15 minutes or so for the seedlings to get the water that they need. And I can also tell by looking at the top of the cell packs that the color of the soil is now a dark brown color. And then what I do is I lift up this tray, and from one corner, very carefully, I just dump out the water. And I actually just dump it back into a watering can. But you can use a bucket or something, that's deep enough. But when it comes to the seedlings that are much bigger and that have more leaves on them, those do need fertilizer at this point. But you don't want to give them too much fertilizer. So I just dilute my fertilizer by about half of what it says on the package. I water it the same way with in the bottom of the tray, but I give them fertilizer at that point. And there's no real answer when it comes to how often to water. You really want to just look at your plants and assess them individually. In a perfect world, we would just pick every Saturday as our day to water all our seedlings, but that's not the way it usually works, because you're going to find that if you try to do a schedule like that, your seedlings might be getting too much water, and or they might be not getting enough water. So you really want to assess each seedling, each tray, and just see what their needs are. And this is just a restaurant to go container. I like to heavily sow my seeds in containers like this, and I have holes in the bottom of it. I also water this from the bottom. So I would place this into like a cookie sheet or some sort of a pan and put water in there, and the water will then soak up from the bottom. That is the best way to water your little tiny seedlings. You don't want to water them from the top. That's also causes fungal issues, and it can cause damping off. So you want to do the best you can when it comes to bottom watering your plants. So I've made a bunch of videos in the past showing you how to collect your own seeds, like wax begonias, like impatiens, like a whole ton of other plants. And then I've been making videos showing you how to mass sow a bunch of seeds, and then how you can end up with so many plants. I personally, it gets me excited to have so many plants. I love it. I enjoy it. I've always been frugal, especially starting when I had kids. And I just learned to be on a budget. And that's a big reason why I created this channel. It's all about gardening on a budget. And I like sharing what I know or what I've learned. And now that I have 2 kids in college, I really have to be on a budget. So that's a big reason why I like to save money when it comes to gardening. However, I'm all about buying plants from local nurseries. I want to support our local business, but I also want to do what I can to save money in areas where, because if I was to buy all of these plants, it would be a lot of money for me. So I'm going to clear off this table now, and I'm going to take you in for a closer look and show you what some of the plants look like these seedlings in here. I'll show you some of the bigger plants, and I'll show you how to prick out some of the seedlings and put them into 6 cell packs. I like to use my own potting mix, and I make it myself. And the biggest reason I do that is it saves me a lot of money. I go through a ton of potting mix during this time of year, And if I was to buy bagged potting mix, it would just cost so much money. And the way I look at it is these little seedlings right now, they don't need a ton. They just need they need soil, they need water, they need some fertilizer. You absolutely, without a doubt, can buy your own potting mix. And there are lots of different recipes out there for making your own potting mix. I'll put a link to the video below showing you the recipe that I came up with. And with the potting mix, it's good to have it pre-moistened. I like to add boiling hot water to this, and then I just like to mix it around all the way, get to the bottom and mix all the potting mix and make sure that that boiling water has reached the top as well as the bottom. The reason I like to add boiling hot water is I just want to kill off the possibility of any fungus gnat eggs that might be in here. And it is now middle of March. I still don't have any fungus gnats, and I really do believe that that has been helping. And the other good thing about adding the boiling hot water, letting it cool down, is I had to add water to this anyway to pre-moisten it. So why not just add boiling hot water? The key is, though, you just want to give it time and let it cool down after you've done that. And you can see when I squeeze this that there's no water dripping out, and yet the soil is holding its form. And that's what you want. I like to use these cheap 6 cell packs when potting up. And I have reused this season indoors, so I'm not concerned about any sort of diseases or fungal issues. But if you do get pots or cell packs from other places, let's say friends or neighbors, you just never know if the cell pack had some disease in it before. So you do want to sterilize your pots before using them. And I have a video that I made that shows how to sterilize your pots, and I'll link that down below as well. And I've had a lot of questions from people asking, about these, like, where am I buying them from? I initially made an investment and bought them off of Amazon. However, I did that years ago, and these have lasted me. Even though they are not that sturdy, I just am gentle with them. I take good care of them. I also get a bunch from people that buy plants from me from my backyard plant nursery. And I also have a local nursery that has an area where you can recycle pots. I constantly find these out there as well. So I'm always picking up free pots wherever I can find them. And Facebook Marketplace also is a great place to look for these. When it comes to adding the potting mix into containers like this, you want to add it, but you don't want to pack the soil in there. So there's that nice fine balance of making sure that you're taking out any air pockets or air gaps that are in there, because if there are air pockets, that's a problem. Because when it comes to watering your plants, it's not going to water the plants effectively. So you want to make sure you're removing any air pockets. But you also want to make sure you're not pressing down too hard onto any sort of pots or cell packs like this. I wanted to show you the difference between some impatiens that were pricked out a number of weeks ago. They look great, they're large, and you can see here that the initial leaves, which are called the cotyledons, are down here. Those are the first leaves. And then the first true leaves are like the leaves right here. And this would be like the second set of true leaves. That's when you want to start fertilizing your seedlings. You don't want to fertilize your seedlings as soon as they've germinated and you have the cotyledon leaves. You want to wait until you have your first set of true leaves. So a plant like this at this point is getting fertilizer. And here is where I initially mass sowed a whole bunch of those impatient seeds. You can see that these little seedlings do not have, really, most of them do not have the first set of true leaves. It's mostly just the cotyledons. Had I pricked out all of the seedlings out of this tray on the same day, they all would look like this. But due to timing, I don't have time to do that. So I pick away at this a little at a time whenever I have time. And until then, I continue to bottom water. There are holes in the bottom here, and that's been working out really well. And you can see I strategically I started in one area. I started pricking out seedlings and working my way around. And so I still have a little patch here and then all of these here. I want you to guess, how many seedlings do you think are in here? I have no clue. I guessed 100, but I think there might be more than that. When it comes to pricking out the seedlings, I want to get 6 right now because we're going to try to fill up a 6-pack. So what you want to do is just use some sort of a tool where you can prick out your seedlings. I like to just use a pen, but you can use whatever you have handy. And when you're handling your seedlings, you don't ever want to handle them from the stem, because if you were to break the stem or crush the stem, the plant would be dead. So you always want to handle your seedlings by the leaf. And you can see that this whole entire chunk wants to come out, but I'm going to carefully tease it apart. And this is what happens, and that's okay. A leaf has come off. That's happened to me many times before, and this plant will be absolutely fine. There's the root. There's one of the leaves over here. And what's going to happen with this particular plant is it's still going to grow. And now the true leaves that are in the center will start forming. So don't throw away a seedling like this. It is still very good and it will do just fine when you plant it. That has a nice big root to that one. Also, you want to make sure that your seedlings have been well watered before you start doing this process. You want to give them the best chance of survival. And here we have two seedlings. So you can just gently tease them apart. So I just laid the seedlings on top here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a hole. And because these seedlings are quite large, well, when I say large, I guess I mean tall, I want to bury them pretty much to there. And typically with most plants, they will respond better if you do that. And I'm just gently pushing around on the side here. Many times I'll just use the back of my pen. And you want to make sure that the seedling is in there nice and firm. I enjoy doing this process in the morning when I wake up. It might be 5 a.m. and I'm having my coffee. I'm catching up on my latest videos on YouTube. And it's actually very relaxing. And there's nothing better than growing your own plants, that feeling of starting something from seed and babying it and watching it grow into something beautiful, like a flower or a vegetable that's going to feed you or your family. I have had the seedlings that are in that restaurant to go container under my LED shop lights. And because at this point they need the light. They have not been on a heat mat. They were removed from the heat mat as soon as I had a fair amount of germination in that tray. Isn't that beautiful? I just love it. I think it's great. And as I mentioned, this little guy right here will be absolutely fine. It will take right off and it's not a problem that it's missing a leaf. It might be sadder to us, but it's not sad to that plant. The next plant that I want to talk about is impatiens. I love impatiens, and lately I've been getting a lot of comments from people saying that this is their first year growing impatiens from seed. And I wanted to show you today what some of the impatiens look like. They're very small. I started them a few weeks later than last year, and I'm actually glad that I did because it's very important to be starting your plants at the right time. And the right time for me might be a different time for you. Again, it's all based on your zip code, and then you want to count back depending on which plant that you want to start. So for impatiens, I don't remember how many weeks before your last frost you're supposed to start these. I can pop that up on the screen. But I had looked at that information and I started my impatien seeds based on that date. And once again, these were impatien seeds that I had collected in the fall time. I'll put a link to that video down in the description below. I sowed the seeds in this restaurant to go container and had this on a heat mat. I had a clear plastic wrap on it. And as soon as I saw a fair amount of germination, I removed the clear plastic wrap. I took this off of a heat mat and it's been under LED shop lights ever since then. And when it comes to pricking out the seedlings, I've done some, but you can see I still have a lot more to do. And surprisingly, the ones that are in here actually have their first set of true leaves. I haven't given any fertilizer to any of my alyssum, but I will be giving them fertilizer going forward because they deserve it at this point. They have gotten their first set of true leaves. And again, if you count, I have a full tray here, so that's 72, and then another tray. So I already have quite a few alyssum plants, but I love using alyssum out in my landscape as well as in all my containers and pots. And there are just so many benefits to having alyssum in your yard. So what I'll do now is take you in for a closer look, just so you can see what these look like. These actually look the same as these plants in here, but that way you can just get a nice feel for the plants. But then also I'll show you once again my process for pricking out the alyssum plants and potting them up into 6-packs. Once again, I have a 6-cell pack here. Look how beautiful these little seedlings are. So many. Do you want to even guess how many are in here? So exciting. You can see again over here is where I started pricking out my seedlings. And that's typically how I like to do it. I like to start from an area, a corner, and just make my way through. It's the easiest way to get access to each of the seedlings. And again, you want to hold your seedlings by a leaf. This soil has been pre-moistened, which is good. And there's actually a fairly good root system to the seedling. I laid the seedlings that we just pricked out on here. Go ahead and make the hole. I'm going to backfill around it. Just want to make sure the roots are under the soil and the green part is above it. This alyssum is the white alyssum. I know there are other colors out there, like the purple color, maybe even a pink one, possibly a yellow one. And sometimes if there's too much soil or dirt, you can remove some of it off there. But, or the other thing is just make the hole larger to accommodate it. Plants are very resilient. And I know when it comes to thinning out, you can always thin a plant out just by cutting, if you had 2 in here, you could cut one um, and just keep the strongest one. That's always an option if you are planting your seedlings in something like a 6-cell pack. But for me, because I mass sow them, I want to keep as many as I can keep. And it's nice to have backups just in case a seedling or two end up not making it. I just wanted to make this short and sweet video just to show you how to pot up both Impatiens as well as Alyssum. I recently started the lobelia seed, some Dusty Miller, and some Azuratum, and they all are looking great. I'll be doing a tour video soon, just showing you how all the plants are looking that we've started together from seed indoors. But what I plan on doing is every so often I'll do a video similar to this just to show you what you need to do to pot up and take care of your little seedlings, especially if you started the same seedlings that I've started. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.